Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome this afternoon to the political forum sponsored by the Montgomery County, Rapid City, Floyd County branch of the NAACP and the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County. I'm Debbie Travis, president of the NAACP, and this is Gunan Karan, who is president of the League of Women Voters here in Montgomery County. We're pleased to have you tonight as we have the opportunity to meet our candidates who are incumbents, who are running for sheriff of the county, as well as our Commonwealth attorney. The NAACP and the League of Women Voters are nonpartisan organizations, and our goal is to inform the community about your voting rights, places to go to vote, when to vote, and of course, to give you the opportunity to know more about the candidates. So on behalf of our two organizations, we welcome the two candidates here tonight, and we welcome you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I did want to make just a few brief announcements. One, as you all know, early voting began on September 22nd. And if you haven't voted yet or hadn't noticed, our registrar's office here in Montgomery County has moved. And we just want to make sure everyone knows that it's no longer in this building, the county government building, but it's now located beside a Food Lion on Franklin Street. And that address is 1546 North Franklin Street. And so if you are planning to early vote, that is where you go. The second is just a brief announcement. The League of Women Voters, Lifelong Learning Institute, and the NAACP will be sponsoring a community forum next Wednesday on ranked choice voting. The forum will be at 7 p.m. at the Blacksburg Town Council Chambers, and we encourage you all to attend that forum. And so now we are excited to have tonight's candidate conversation to include our Sheriff, Hank Parton, and Commonwealth's Attorney, Mary Pettit. Both are incumbents and are running unopposed. Sheriff Parton assumed the office in 2016 and Attorney Pettit in 2005. When asked to participate in tonight's conversation, I received an enthusiastic yes from both of them. In preparation for tonight's conversation, both were provided with 5 questions. 2 to 3 of those questions will be asked. All other questions will come from you, the audience. You should have received note cards upon entering. Please note if you have a question, you can ask specifically to the sheriff or specifically to the Commonwealth's attorney. Once your questions are ready, just raise your hand and someone will pick those up for you. So tonight will also be less formal than our previous candidate forums, although our guidelines will be somewhat similar in that we will begin with an introduction from each of our candidates. Questions that come in will also be screened by our question sorters just to avoid duplication and to also make sure the questions asked are relevant to the offices that they hold. Each candidate then will have 2 minutes to make any closing statements. And so with that, we will begin with reintroductions. We'll allow each a little bit of time to reintroduce themselves to you. And we will start first with our Commonwealth's attorney.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to be here tonight, and I see a lot of faces that I recognize out there, so that's always a good feeling too. And for those that I don't recognize, I look forward to hearing your questions and getting to know you a little bit. So I think it's important to know, what does the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office do? Because a lot of people don't really know exactly what we do. So it is obviously an elected position. We prosecute criminal cases in Montgomery County. So we cover the town of Blacksburg, town of Christiansburg, Virginia Tech, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. We, of course, also work with the state police, but it is only criminal prosecution. So if you have a traffic ticket, we're not involved in a traffic ticket. If it is a DUI, that would be a criminal case, so we would be involved in that. And then it goes all the way up to first-degree murder. So it's a broad spectrum of things. I have been in this office for 17 years. Prior to that, I was in 2 other Commonwealth attorneys' offices. I was in Roanoke County for a while, and I was in Gloucester County, which is my hometown down near Yorktown and Williamsburg area. But I've been out here for about 20 years, and I have been your elected Commonwealth attorney for 11. I live here in Montgomery County with my husband. I am proud to say I raised my daughter here. It was a great place. She is now married, and she and her husband are in the Navy, so they unfortunately are not very close by right now. Montgomery County is a good, safe community. It is a good, safe community to raise your family. It's a good, safe community for businesses to come and start businesses and to give people jobs. And people want to move here. And the way that we continue that is by having law and order here in Montgomery County. And that desire for a safe community is a desire that everybody shares. Regardless of whatever your political positions are on other things, we all want to be able to go to sleep at night and feel safe. We want to be able to send our children out into the community and feel safe about that. So I enjoy my role in making that happen, and I look forward to continuing to do that for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hank Parton, and since January 1st of 2016, I've been the sheriff of Montgomery County, having been reelected to a second term in November of 2019. And I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for hosting the forum and for inviting our wonderful Commonwealth's attorney and myself to participate tonight. I am currently seeking my 3rd term of office and looking forward to continuing my public service to our citizens and to advancing our public safety agenda. And I would also like to acknowledge and thank my beautiful wife, Dana, and our beautiful daughter, Elena, for supporting me during my entire career. And I've got to tell you all, being a spouse of a law enforcement officer is difficult at best. Late nights, long hours, missed birthdays and holidays are normal. I could never thank them enough for all they've been through with me. Serving as sheriff has been one of the most humbling and honorable experiences of my life. I have been blessed to serve with and lead some of the finest men and women in law enforcement and an exceptional support staff that keeps us on the straight and narrow. On January 1st of 24, I will enter my 38th year in law enforcement, the last 30 of which have been with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. I'm also a proud veteran with over 22 and a half years of service in the United States Army, Army Reserve, and National Guard. I deployed and served under numerous operations after 9/11 and retired in November of 2004 at the rank of Sergeant Major. These life accomplishments would never have been possible if not for so many good people in my life and my Lord and Savior. I have been truly blessed my entire career, and so glad to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. Can we give them both a round of applause? So now we're going to dive into the most pressing questions that we have from our citizens about the offices that you both hold. And so this first question will be for both of you. What changes or reforms have you made to your office since you first took office? And so we will since Mary introduced herself first, Hank Parton will go first.
So constitutional offices are quite unique, especially in the Commonwealth, and especially for the sheriff. The code section in Virginia gives sheriffs all kinds of unique powers. And if it's a good sheriff, that can be a very good thing. One of those powers is the power to hire and fire at will. And deputy sheriffs serve at the pleasure of the sheriff. And a lot of you might know or remember back in the old days, you know, sheriffs would come in and have a big old bad guy sitting on their shoulder that tells them to clean house and bring in everybody new. Obviously, that is not the way to handle business, and that's not the way we handle business. But what it does do is allow the sheriff to clean house, and we keep a very clean house. So back to the question, I guess one of the best things that happened to us when I was elected was the fact that I grew up here in the sheriff's office. And I knew what needed to be done and the changes that needed to be made. And we made those changes right off the bat. And everything has just been smooth since then in that regard. We have made so many changes to the office. When I was elected, we were in the process of moving from the old sheriff's office into the new sheriff's office, which was the old courthouse. And the 911 Regional Center was also opening at the same time. 2015-16 were just incredible as far as transitioning goes. But we adapted, and the sheriff's office is a well-oiled machine right now.
Thank you. Mary?
So the majority of crimes in Montgomery County have a substance abuse component to them. And we probably would think about things like possession of a Schedule I or II narcotic, a felony type possession. And then you might think about drug dealers, but there are a lot of other crimes that are caused by people that have substance abuse issues. A lot of domestic situations have a component of alcohol or drugs in them. Breaking into your home, stealing things from Walmart or Kroger. Those things are stolen by people that are using drugs, and then they will try to sell them to get more money to buy more drugs. So that's a huge problem, really in every community. It's not just Montgomery County. So one of the things that we do is we certainly prosecute people. We prosecute the drug dealers. For the drug users, we prosecute them, but it's a little bit more maybe of carrot with a little stick behind it as well. So one of the programs that we've implemented in 2017 was the drug court program. Now, some people, and I know that I've seen quite a few law enforcement folks in here, I think at first they thought, oh, that's just easy, it's some probation thing. Well, I am telling you that it takes you at least 2 years to graduate from that program. Everybody does 100 hours of community service. Everybody has to have a job or be working or be going to school. A lot of our participants are doing both. So it's not an easy program. They come to court and are accountable to the judge. We don't expect people to be perfect. It's a pathway to get to sobriety, and there can be some bumps along the way, but there also are consequences for things. It's not a huge program. Since 2017, we've had about 80 participants in it. We currently have 38 active participants. We've been able to kind of increase the number of people that we can have in the program. And we have had, I believe, 20 or 21 graduates from the program in that time frame. And there's about an equal number who were terminated from the program. So there's some good things that happen out of it. I like to think there's good things for everybody because I think everybody learned something even if they aren't able to complete the program successfully. I'm also going to say there's some cost savings involved in it. We kind of look at how much it would cost to incarcerate these folks, and we've saved about $200,000 for our county. That's not on the state level. We also, with that community service work, we kind of look at that, and it saves the county or contributes to the county by about $10,000 each year. I mentioned they're all either working full-time or going to school, so those are very valuable things to get good citizens. And of course, the value of that sobriety to their family, to their kids, to us as a society is really priceless. So I'm not, that would be disrespectful to all their hard work to try to even put a figure on that, but that's the most important thing in it. So I'll leave it at that.
Good. You both have done a lot during your time in office. And so the next question is just kind of a little bit of a pivot. And what are your priorities during this next term? Are there changes that you would still like to see? What do you think that looks like over the course of the next 4 years? And so Mary, we'll let you answer first.
Thanks. My job, I learn something new every day, and I enjoy that. Some days it's a little more challenging than others, but just to kind of give you an example, I think today is Thursday, and so far what I recall doing this week that was new to me, today there was a juvenile who had made some threats against a house of worship in our county. And so there were some questions about how much information could be given about the juvenile to people who were non-law enforcement. For example, to the people at the house of worship. So that was something that I had to do a little bit of work on, and ended up talking to somebody at the Attorney General's office to see if they agreed with my reading of the statute on that. I'd had a question this week about the polling place, and the question was, can a candidate wear campaign materials inside of the polling place? And the answer to that is no. If you are going in just as a citizen to vote, then you can, but the law now says that if you are a candidate, you should not be wearing anything that indicates your candidacy when you go in inside of that polling area, whether to vote or whether to observe what's going on. I have had 2 reports of adult protective service complaints. That means there is someone who's made a complaint indicating that an adult is being abused or neglected in some fashion. And I've had an equal number of those from Child Protective Services indicating that something is happening with a child that needs to be investigated. We had, if anybody watched the news last night, there was a charge involving a rape that happened at Virginia Tech. That's probably the more traditional kind of thing that you might think about that a Commonwealth Attorney's Office does. I went to court Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I did not go to court today. One of my assistants handled something that I have. I see him sitting out there, so he took the one case I would have had today. It's very important, I think, because there are all these different things that we need to know, and those are constantly changing. I mean, the law is constantly changing. There's changes in technology that we need to understand in order to be able to present that in a court case. There's changes in criminal activity, what kind of new crimes are being committed. So one of the things that I encouraged both for myself and my assistants is training, to be able to answer that diversity of questions that comes in during a week, and to keep up to date on what's going on with technology and out in the criminal world.
Hank?
Well, obviously, number one is continuing our daily battle against the influx of opioids and all the other narcotics and illegal substances that continue to attack our communities. We are fighting as hard as we can, and if there's a question later in reference to that, I can dive into that. But obviously, there is a drug problem in Montgomery County. And having said that, as bad as that sounds, there is a drug problem all across this nation. We are not immune to it, and we're not the worst with it. We're probably not the best. But I can tell you, and you can talk to any DEA agent including our Secretary of Public Safety at the state level, who is a DEA agent or former. And any of them will tell you, as long as our border remains wide open, it's just going to get worse. And that's just the way it is. So as hard as we fight, we can only do what we can do. We have the resources we have, and that's all we have. And the biggest problem there is the bad guys don't play by the rules, and we do. Sometimes they win. Another priority for me, and it always has been, is obviously our schools. And for me personally, our elementary schools, but all of our schools, I just have a little niche for the elementary level. And we're doing wonderful with that. We're all covered in the county thanks to my wonderful board of supervisors. That happened. That was a campaign promise in 15, and it's done. So now the challenge is taking care of all of our schools. So I feel sure that will happen, and looking forward to the day that it does. And I see one of our SRO supporters shaking her head, and I got to throw kudos out to Supervisor Biggs. She is, along with the rest of the board, always pushed for the SROs and supported me.
Thank you both. The next question, again, will be to both of you. How have you overcome some of the obstacles or challenges that you found within your office? And Hank, you get to answer first.
Let me start with, I am so proud of our office in particular, and all of our folks. We have established a culture at the sheriff's office that is bar none at the top of anybody's list. And I love to brag about this because loyalty and stability in the workplace seems to have disappeared with the last two generations. Now mostly it's about the almighty. How much are you going to pay me, and how much are you going to pay me? At the sheriff's office, I can tell you that our command staff is made up of 5 captains and a chief deputy. Each captain manages a division within the office. That entire command staff, including myself, has worked nowhere else their entire career. That's just an amazing accomplishment for any workplace. Myself, I had 6 years prior to the sheriff's office somewhere else. And if you think about that, captains are long in the tooth. You know, to be a captain, you put some years down the highway. You're in your career deeply, and all of those folks have been there the entire time. I think that says a lot about your sheriff's office. The culture there is just incredible. And even going back to 19 and 20, when everything started unraveling and police departments across the nation and sheriff's offices couldn't find anybody to work, and they were losing good folks in droves. We did not suffer with that, and we still don't. We're just very blessed that way. It's a great place to work. It really is.
Good, thank you.
And they've got such a good boss.
Do they?
Yeah.
I'll talk to y'all later. Mary?
Well, you're probably going to think that the sheriff and I coordinated on this, but we did not. But I'm going to hit on two things that he also hit on. One, the pandemic was certainly a challenge. It was a challenge for everybody. I hope we don't have to go through that, ever again. I hope we learn some things from it, but I really don't want to have to learn those lessons again. During the pandemic, the court system still has to work. People commit crimes, people get arrested, people need to be brought before a judge and advised of what their charges are. They need to have an attorney appointed. If they are incarcerated, they need to have bond hearings, and the system has to keep rolling along. The front end of that system was certainly our law enforcement, and the sheriff talked about that challenge a little bit. But my office was not closed a day during the pandemic. We had to adapt, and I can tell you that we have a number of different judges in our building, and they all had different opinions, and they all had different rules for how their courtroom was going to work. And I could start on the top floor and get some directive, and by the time I got to the second floor, the person on the top floor might have changed his mind about what his directive was, and there'd be a phone call as I was entering to tell me something else. So it was really a challenge to try to satisfy all of the different people who were trying to make good decisions to keep that criminal justice system working and to keep everybody that needed to come to the courthouse safe. Hiring and retention of officers. The sheriff's office has done a fine job in doing that. Our other departments, some of them have struggled a little bit more with finding people. What we have kind of ended up with is a lot of newer officers who did not. It was different, the whole during that whole time, and who they could arrest, and the way that they tried to work cases was different. Sometimes things like the drug cases were not pursued maybe as actively as they are being pursued right now. So things were different. So we have some new officers. We had a lot of turnover in officers. And the way that translates to my office is I want good, solid cases brought to my office. So if it's a newer officer, they have to have some time to learn on the job. We all get that on-the-job kind of training and experience. And they also need maybe to have some, particular trainings or advice and just working with us in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to try to learn more about presenting the case in court and testifying in court and things like that. So we try to help by providing those trainings and conversation and encouragement, and sometimes telling them when maybe what the problem with the case was and what they could do better next time. So that's another challenge for us is really just getting the officers up to speed, and I think that's coming along now.
Good, thank you. So this question is for you, Hank, and you talked about the school resource officers and now being throughout all the counties, and I think also in the towns. And so this question is, when you are hiring a school resource officer, what characteristics do you look for? And then secondly, what type of training or ongoing professional development do those officers receive?
So school resource officers, or SROs, are a unique animal all in themselves. In the back of the room, I have one of my outstanding patrol deputies who does amazing work on the road doing what he does. He's getting the drugs, he's getting the DUI cases, he's getting the drunks off the road, he's saving lives. But if I told him tomorrow, you're going into school, you're an SRO, that would not work. Because he loves what he's doing right now. You've got to love what you're doing to be an SRO. That has to be a person that wants to be there And every school, no matter county or town, has its own personality. You've got to match that deputy or that police officer with that administration and that school and those kids. If you don't, it doesn't work. And it all starts right here. It starts in the heart. They got to want to do it. They got to want to be there. They got to have a love for it. That's why it's so hard. That's why it's hard to find them. And that's why it's hard to hire SROs. And that's why we have 2 openings right now. We had 3 openings because our board gave me 3 positions for the elementaries in Christiansburg. And we have been working for the past 4 or 5 months as hard as we can, even having put out on social media special incentives, including a dollar amount for SROs that we hire. And so we still need 2, by the way, if anybody knows anyone. The key is they need to be certified. They need to have some experience under their belt. We can't hire a brand new person, send them to the police academy and say, you're an SRO in Eastern Montgomery. That doesn't work. They have to have some experience, and that makes it even more challenging. But it's tough. It really is tough finding specialties, especially SROs.
And so once you have found the right person, and I like understanding that all of the schools do have their own personalities
Yes.
and need to fit in with the administration and, the students that they serve, what type of training do you also provide ongoing for SROs?
So on and above their police academy training, our in-service training, all our firearms training that we do annually, twice a year now. There is school resource officer training, which is also challenging because that only takes place in certain parts of the state, certain times of the year. So there might only be 2 trainings this year. So if we hired, for example, we just hired a young officer from another agency to be an SRO. And he came up in a family of teachers, both parents, in another county. He's been dying to be an SRO. He is like the lucky charm out there. But he is not SRO trained, which is basically a week of intensive training and then some follow-up. But there's not a school available until the closest school is February for us to get him in. So he's starting work October 15th or so. And we will put him in a school, and we will probably have to put someone with him for a while. But his official SRO status won't come along until February.
And so that training, do you know what that training entails? Like what kind of do they?
I have never been.
So I need to tell Richmond that
I'm
we
one
need
of
one
those,
here.
like my patrol deputy, I would not have done well in school.
Oh, okay. That is good for us to know. Thank you. Our next question, and this is for you, Mary, about the Commonwealth's Attorney Office. So what oversight and involvement do you have in the decisions your assistants may make in handling various cases?
It depends really on the case and the type of case. I try to hire good people who have maybe different opinions, because I think a good, vigorous discussion about cases can be a good thing. But I also hire people who I think have pretty good judgment themselves about, when is a decision over their pay grade, or, when is this that is maybe going to to be a little bit more controversial, and then, I kind of trust them to come and talk with me about things. There are certain things in the office that are so routine, a possession of narcotics, a DUI, those kind of things. We have, I don't know, 10 possession of narcotics every week, probably. A number of DUIs every week. So we have kind of standardized things that we do on those. And then it becomes more, do we need to have a conversation because I think we should do something different in this case? So I trust my assistants the majority of the time to use their own sort of good judgment on things, and then I have an open door, so they come in and we talk about it a lot.
Good. Okay. This question is actually for both of you all, and it's a question about domestic violence. And it's just some people recommend shifting of responses to domestic violence to social services and away from law enforcement. What do you think about this idea? Mary, I'll let you answer first.
Well, I think that, I'm not sure what social services would do about that. There certainly is a component of counseling that could be helpful on both sides, both for the person that's being abused and for the person that is doing the abusing. The problem is that there's not equality in power between the two of them. So the person who is causing the abuse in the home is typically the one that has more power and control in the home. So if you're working with social services and you just say, well, let's, everybody go to counseling, that's not really two equal parties agreeing to do that. Now, that being said, there is, there's a desire to have families work things out and to keep families whole if we can. So what usually happens on the first time that there is a domestic violence situation is that it is brought to court, but then counseling and some probation is ordered for the person that was the defendant in the case, the abuser in the case. And the hope there is that by addressing some things, whether it's substance abuse issues or whether it's anger issues or just learning how to deal with conflict, that we can, help the family to improve and be a better, more stable and reliable family and not come back to court. But I don't really see how social services could handle, people are hurt in these situations, and that's not really appropriate to put social services in the middle of that.
Hank?
So is the question meaning, should social services be involved in the response?
I think both. Should it go first to social services, then to law enforcement, or should they be involved?
Well, absolutely not. Without question, not. No. I don't know how many law enforcement officers have died responding to domestic calls, but there are thousands. Domestic calls can be some of the most dangerous calls that we respond to. And, usually there's an arrest. That's us. So God loves social services. They got a tough job, but I don't think they'd want to be in the middle of that. Now, post-incident, I'm sure there are plenty of times where they could be very beneficial, just like Mary said. Yeah.
Yeah, no. That was a tough question. That was a tough question. This next one, though, is for both of you, and it has to do with our system of cash bail. And so the question reads, cash bail results in poor individuals being kept in custody while others with more money can remain free until the time of their court appearance. Do you think that this is just? Hank, first.
Well, I was going to maybe take it off of the sheriff a little
Okay.
bit, because he really has no control over that or involvement in it at all. Cash bail is an interesting thing, and I start out looking at cases and looking at somebody's criminal history. I look at what the charge is, and I'm kind of thinking either they should not have to put up any kind of secured bond, they shouldn't have to put up any money, or they should stay in jail. So it's an either or kind of a thing. And most of the time, I think you can arrive at one or the other of those things. I mean, the purpose of a bail is to make sure that somebody is going to follow whatever conditions are put on them by the judge. And that includes following the law, not committing any more crimes while they're out, means coming to court. That if somebody is able to do those things, then I don't, most of the time having a secured bond and having them put up money is not really going to affect that. And the other part of it is, sometimes I think we think, well, okay, if they're, ordered to pay $2,000 and they've paid the bondsman $200 to have the bondsman secure the rest of it, then we think, well, if they don't show up to court, the bondsman's going to go out and find them. All right, I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I have never had the bondsman go through the whole process where the bondsman actually has to forfeit, the money that they paid in. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's this lengthy process. I have certainly had bondsmen, find people occasionally, but it's not really very helpful. So I really try to stick to is there a good reason why this person needs to stay in jail? And then the other piece is, or can we just put some conditions on them and not make them pay any money? I will tell you that the other thing that happens is if it's somebody where there is some kind of a secured bond and they're not able to make it, we make every effort that we can to just go ahead and get that into court. And, oftentimes we look at it and we say, well, somebody's been in jail for a week. That's all that they would end up getting if they're found guilty in this case, and we'll make sure that the defense attorney knows, and let's go ahead and get it into court pretty quickly so we can resolve that and kind of move on to things.
Good. That sounds very just.
I hope so.
Yeah, sounds good. And so you're off the hook. You don't have to answer that question.
I would love to answer that question.
You would?
You would?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If I could compare it, do we have a perfect country? Absolutely not. Do we live in the best country in the world? Absolutely. Cash bail is the same. Is it a perfect system? It's not. But do we want to be Illinois? Do we want to eliminate cash bail? Do we want to live like the people in San Francisco are now? Or New York? Do we want those kinds of crime rates? Absolutely not. It's incredible. It blows my mind that anybody could think eliminating cash bail would make anything better. And what most people don't realize is we live right here in the New River Valley and in Montgomery County. We live in one of the most safest places in the United States. Our crime rate is that low. As bad as it seems, and it only seems bad because something bad happens. We have a shooting, we have a killing, every so often. My gosh, look at these other places. Look where these poor people are living. Look at all the muggings, the murders, the carjackings, the riding down the road, getting shot. That doesn't happen here. If we eliminate cash bail, the felons that we arrest and take before the magistrate, all they're doing is taking a breather. They're going to be back out on the street in 20 or 30 minutes. That's my answer.
Well, thank you. But I think that Mary offered really good solutions, which helps to keep our county safe. So fortunately, we have two opinions, and we do have one of the safest counties here, so.
I can guarantee you, Mary and I are on board with everything. I'm just expressing it a little stronger.
Strongly, yes. This question I'm actually going to direct just to you, Mary, and it's about election laws. How are violations in election laws enforced? Do you have a role in that?
Gosh, yes, we do. So sometimes my office has really odd things that we, sort of ancillary things that we do. And so that we do have some role in election laws. For example, if somebody, when you're running for election, everybody's required to do periodic statements of their finances. How much money have they taken in? What did they spend their money on? That all gets filed. It gets filed online, but then it's our registrar, Connie Byers, who kind of keeps track of that. And so if you miss that, there is an automatic $100 fee for that for the first time, and then it kind of goes up from that. So if somebody misses it and then they did not promptly pay, then it would be my office's responsibility to go in, and that's not a criminal case, but it's a civil case, and try to collect that money that has been deemed owed. So that's one thing. If there are questions about things on Election Day and our trained poll workers are not able to resolve it, and our registrar is not able to resolve it, our election officials, then it is my office that is asked about that. And there can be a criminal charge out of it. There also are a lot of rules about, for example, obtaining signatures if you want to be on the ballot, and that's another thing that my office is sometimes asked about and tasked with. I guess knock on wood, I have not had to prosecute anybody. There certainly have been times where I've had to sort of explain to people, yes, you really do have to pay that $100, and please do it so that we don't have to go any further in this process. It's about fairness, I think. So one thing I have chosen is to not really work the polls myself. Now, the year that I had a contested election and I was not the elected official yet, I did go to the polls myself, but otherwise I don't go to the polls because I don't want to be out there working for one side or the other and then have somebody have a question and feel like I am not going to be fair in answering that because I was just out there supporting somebody else.
This next question, we'll go to both of you because both of you mentioned this. We talked about we have an opioid crisis, as most of the country does, as well as some solutions that we have in doing drug court and things like that. Can you please elaborate on the relationship between drugs and crime in Montgomery County? And please explain or expand upon some of the strategies to control drug abuse and crime here. And we will first, Hank, would you like to answer first?
Sure. It's hand in hand. Most crime we can tie back to some type of illegal drug activity. Fortunately, we are ahead of the game here. We have a task force with the Sheriff's Office, Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Radford City is involved. All of our federal partners are involved. We use the DEA a lot. The Sheriff's Office actually has 8 deputies that are also sworn U.S. Marshals. They're still employed with us. They're our deputies, but they're also on a Marshal's task force. And the FBI. And What that allows us to do is use the federal resources because they have resources we could never dream of, and they have technology that we'll never have. But doing that is how we're able to fight what we're fighting. And we're also involved with the task force in Roanoke called the Star City Task Force, which is all of those localities. Because what we have found the last few years is there is a major connection with Roanoke to the problems that we're experiencing here and in Radford and in Blacksburg. And it's all tied in, and it's all very sad. But it all trails down to the crime that we see. And of course, when we see that and all the investigations are done and our task force does their work and the vice squads do their work, then Mary ends up and her office ends up with all that work. That's how it works. But that's a very complicated answer. We could talk about that for a long time.
Don't worry, I'll have you at a forum at a later date. Mary?
Yeah, it is a really complicated issue, and we try a lot of different things. Sometimes we really hit hard on the drug dealers. We've had a couple of big, longer-term joint efforts with the Christiansburg Police Department and the Sheriff's Office, and Operation this and Operation that, where we've taken out 25 different people. Some were more lower level dealers or conspirators and things, and then some were big distributors. It kind of happened that a lot of them were coming out of Georgia, which was kind of interesting. So we've done those kind of big cases longer term. We certainly a lot of times are working with people who maybe can tell us about who their dealer is and then who that person's dealer is, and trying to use confidential informants and work with them. Sometimes it's what I talked about before, kind of the drug court type of things. If nobody wants to buy drugs, then we won't have drug dealers, right? So you have to kind of work on the supply and the demand side of things. And another program is for people who are picked up on the first possession type charge. There's a program provided for in the Code of Virginia. We refer to it as 251 because that's the code section, but it's basically a probationary period where people are offered treatment and supervision and drug testing to try to put them back on track. So we really hit it from kind of two different ways. And then we also try to address it if we see somebody who's breaking into houses, but substance abuse is one of the underlying reasons why they're breaking into people's houses. Then we'll put certain conditions on them so that when they're in probation, that also gets addressed during that probationary period.
We've come to the last question of the evening, and the question is for both of you, and it reads very simply: how will you work with other Montgomery County elected officials to accomplish the goals that you have for your office? And Mary, would you like to answer first?
Sure. So I didn't like this question because it's like limiting to elected officials, and there's so many. I'm going to. Thank you. For example, certainly we work with the sheriff's office, but we also work with the other departments, law enforcement departments within the county, and it is very important to have good relationships with all of them. I had, unfortunately, at one point in time worked in a county where there was not a good relationship between the sheriff's office there and the Commonwealth Attorney's office, and it's miserable. It's miserable to be, the employee of one or the other of them, and it is not good for the citizens. So it is good for the citizens of Montgomery County to have these good relationships. We count on the sheriff's office to make sure that the courthouse is a safe place where witnesses can come and testify in trials. I mean, we just had one, I guess, 2 weeks ago, which was the shooting that had occurred in the Hookah Lounge in Blacksburg. And there was a gang component from Roanoke City area. And Roanoke City struggles because people don't want to come and testify. And we wanted to make sure that people who had to come here and testify felt safe in being able to do that. And so our sheriff's office helps us with that. So that's an important relationship. Our clerk's offices are very important. Both the circuit court clerk's office, as well as the general district court clerk's office and the juvenile and domestic relationship clerk's office. They all are responsible for keeping track of the papers and making sure that the defendants, if they're incarcerated, are brought to court on the appropriate date and time. So that's an important relationship. With respect to the treasurer or commissioner of revenue, I don't have a relationship with them very often. My office doesn't get to handle money, which is really a plus, so I don't have to worry about auditing money. But sometimes, I need to ask one of those offices for some assistance, or if they can explain to me how something works in their office, and I think we have a good relationship with them. So I think it's very important to everybody's going to have their own personalities and make their own decisions about how their office should run. But the most important thing is that we're willing to talk to each other, and we are all need to remember that, we're working for the citizens. So that's our goal, and we should be able to work together to get the best result for them.
Hank?
So, simply if we did not have a good relationship with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, that would be such a disservice to the citizens. It really would be. I don't know how a county would function like that. I just don't. Fortunately, we have the best Commonwealth Attorney's Office in the state, and it just works. It just works. And as far as the clerk's office go, obviously the sheriff's office is going to deal with the clerk's office and Commonwealth's Attorney's Office more than anyone. And a lot of people don't realize that is one of the sheriff's duties. That all falls on me, the security of that monster courthouse. So we have to be involved, and the sheriff has to be involved with grand jury, term days, everything that goes on in that courthouse. Just like everything in the jail, everything is sheriff. But without the Commonwealth Attorney, obviously that's who we deal with all the time and work the closest with. The Treasurer's Office, we are involved with serving. The treasurer has this really nasty habit of going after people who don't pay their taxes. And they use us to go get them.
What?
Never
Dare
figured
they
that
make
out.
you the bad guy?
But we do. We take care of the treasurer's tax papers and anything else that they would need. Like Mary said, really not a whole lot of contact with the Commissioner of Revenue because there's really no need for it. But if there ever is, we'd be there in a heartbeat. Just the way the system works, we're just not that involved with them. But the relationships are imperative. We've got to have them. Yeah. And I don't think the county functions well if they're not there. So.
Very true. All right. Well, we've come to the time now. You guys can make some closing statements why the citizens should come out and vote for you and not your opponents. on Election Day. And so Mary, we'll let you go first, and then we'll finish with you, Hank.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
just need to worry about the write-ins, right? Now,
yes.
I'm always curious about that. Well, thank you very much to the NAACP and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. And I think it's wonderful that it's now available online, because I know there are a lot of people who aren't able to come out or to come to all of these. And it does provide an opportunity for people to get to hear from the candidates, and that's an important thing. It's important to me to hear from the community. So this gives me kind of the opportunity to have some questions from the audience, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to groups like this. I also look at sort of community service as another way of finding out what's going on and what's important to people in the community. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing vision screenings with the Lions Club over at Christiansburg Elementary School. So that's always fun to kind of work with the little ones and see what's going on in our schools. My husband tells me that society can't survive without two things. And I will tell you that he was a town engineer for a long time. He retired in January, but he comes at one of these from his town engineering experience. And that's basically a sanitation focus. You got to have clean water, and that probably means you have to have some means of getting rid of your sewage. Disease is one thing that will bring down our communities. Another thing that we need in society is the law and order part of it. And our rules need to be established for communities and societies to work smoothly, and those all need to be applied fairly and justly to everybody. I am often asked if I prosecute all of the cases in my office myself. And the answer to that is surely no way. We do about 1,200 felony cases a year, and we do thousands of misdemeanor prosecutions in a year. There are 2 or 3 courts running every day of the week, so I couldn't possibly be in all of those. Without my terrific team of assistants and legal assistants and victim witness coordinators, I would not be able to do that. So I have an office where there are 7 assistant Commonwealth attorneys, and there are, I think, 9 support staff at this point in time. I know what everybody in my office does. I know how important they are to making the office function smoothly, but I don't know how to do all of their jobs. I try to hire good people and get them good training and trust them to do their job, and trust them when I ask them to do other things or can we change it, to work with me and tell me why that might work or why it won't work. I do go to court every week, but I am also the supervisor and the leader for my employees. During the next 4 years, I'm going to continue to strive for that fair and just application of the law for everybody. I do have to follow what the legislature has enacted, so make sure that you vote for the legislators who are reflective of whatever your values are. And then I will try to make sure that we follow through with the laws that have been enacted. I look forward to continuing to serve all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hank?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I like to talk, so we could have just kept going with questions. Law enforcement can be one of the most rewarding careers, but also one of the most sacrificial careers anyone could choose. Over the past few years, anyone that has chosen this line of work has been challenged and tried like never before. And we know that we're going to be challenged in the future. And sometimes those challenges are hard to take and involve loss of life. And that's the business we're in. And being in law enforcement is in your heart. And some people say it's a calling. That sounds kind of sweet to me. I think it's in your heart, and I think only a very, very, very tiny percentage of the population can do what we do, or would want to do what we do. But I can promise you, as sheriff, I will do everything in my power to ensure our deputies are fully equipped and prepared to face all the adversities that await us. Many accomplishments and improvements have been achieved since I was first elected, and believe me, that's not because I was a leader. It's because of the people I have. I just have the best sheriff's office in the state. That's all I can say. But I can tell you, over the last 7 years and 9 months, many great things have happened, and some sad things have happened. We've lost some very close to us, but many improvements have been made, and looking forward to many more. I will always rely on my record. I've never wavered, and I stand up for what I believe in, and I'm not afraid to speak my mind as long as it's right. And I sit here in my 37th year. I feel that I am proven and that I am the sheriff to lead the men and women of the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office through the challenging times that lie ahead. I know we'll have successes, and I just ask for your support to continue leading and serving this great county the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Can we give them both a round of applause?
Thank you so much, Sheriff Parton. Thank you so much, Mary, for being here. It was very informative. It was wonderful. I'm glad you joined us, and it was a wonderful, wonderful evening. And thank you, Karen, for the 4th time organizing and moderating and being the brain of the forums. So I appreciate all your help. Thank you, our sorters, David, Carolyn, and Beth. And thank you for all, of course, being here. And this is our 4th event at this venue. So we would like to extend our thanks to County Public Information Office, even behind the screen, helping us and helping with the recording. So thank you all. The next 2 events, next 2 Thursdays, one will be at the Blacksburg Town Council Chamber. That will be October 5th, 7 o'clock. And the next one will be Christiansburg Town Chamber, October 12th at 7 o'clock. So I hope you will join us. Have a wonderful evening. Safe travels back home. So you have to go to another venue next time.